In this video, we are going to discuss how to style Markdown documents. Normally, a Markdown document is very plain. As you see here, it just has the text, the information that you need. These documents are usually part of a project. So they're in your project files. README.md is very common. And what we're doing here is just demonstrating how to style these. Now, as you can see, I'm doing inline styling just like you would with an HTML document. So the same way you do inline styling with HTML, you would do the same thing with Markdown. The difference is some of the components. So to get a header up here to display it, you use a single pound. So a single pound right there does that header. Double pound does the background. If I put a third one in there, you'll see it change, because that's a H3, H4, H5, H6. Okay, so we want H2 in there. So we're going to go back up here. We're going to uncomment the H1 just to see what happens. So we have some very basic styling here. We got a blue background with white text. Let's see what we do with the H2. We have a blue underline and a little bit of padding between the text and the underline. Now we can dress this up a little more by adding a linear gradient. So the background now has a little more style to it. And this looks pretty nice, and it's kind of interesting now rather than the plain. But as we go down, we can see that there's still quite a bit that can be styled. So let's go on down and start looking at bold, italic, strike through, and underline. So I want to point out that strike through, normally you would put 2 tildes in the front and 2 tildes at the back. And that's supposed to translate to del. So in here, this tag should work with that. It doesn't, at least not in this editor. This is WebStorm that I'm using. I like WebStorm a lot. It's a professional editor that I use every day. And it's built for the type of work I work in. I do a lot of front-end work at the moment. So let's pull in this one. This is the strong, and we're going to see what happens with this bold text. So color, it was set, and you can see that it looks a lot better. Let's pull in the EM, which is going to be the italic. There's the italic. And let's pull in the del, which is the strike through, and delete or del, that's why that would be used there. And insert, so this is underlined. Instead of underline or something, they are using the insert tag. And this is another one that I had to figure out which one worked. Now, notice in the strong, that's this one here, I have some additional stuff I was playing with just to see if I could make it pop a little more. And what it does is it gives sort of a wrap here. You notice that? It kind of looks like a button. But what I've done, the border on the top and the bottom are 1 pixel, and it's solid, the same color, and it's the same color as the text, but the border radius is 10 pixels. That's what makes it do that wrap. Because if I set this to 1 pixel, watch what happens. It's just straight lines. And by making it 10 pixels, makes it a little more interesting. You could play with, let's say, 5 pixels just to see what that's going to do. So with 5 pixels, you get a little bit of rounding, not much. I'm going to stay with a 10. Now, let's go down to the strike-through text. I have some additional things, just like I did with the bold. I can do some styling here to make this pop a little different. So you can see clearly not just a red line through it with red text, but actually a white background that has a padding of 2 pixels and border radius of 5 pixels. Now, let's go down and look at lists. So this is an unordered list, and the way it's dealt with here is by default you got a circle, and it's just, that's all that is really in there. So if we uncomment this, it added bottom margin. That's all we've got so far. Then I just want to demonstrate, so if we do this one, now we have a circle. I don't know if you can see that. Let me adjust the font size here so it's easier to see. So here we have a circle now, and let's take that out and put a square in. So now we have a square. Well, let's say I want a greater than. I can do that as well. So I just put that in there. Then I want to decorate the text, give it an underline. I can do that. And if I want to do a border on the bottom of the whole thing, I can do that. And I can turn off the underline. So I can I can dress this up any way I want. That's not exactly how I would want it, but just to show you that that could be done that way. Now, the paragraph. Here's the Latin lorem ipsum that we just used for filler. And in here, you can see that it's a bit hard to read. I mean, it is readable, but not as easy as if I give the letter spacing a little more room in there, and it spreads it out and makes it more readable. And I added a bottom margin of 10 pixels. So if I comment that back out again, you can see the difference. Okay. Now, let's go down to tables. So tables are usually done in a Markdown document to document Boolean truth table or something along that line. I've used it to document different states that the program might be in. So this is a way to do the table, and it's very easy to do. You don't have to do anything fancy, but in behind the scenes, it's actually using TR and TH and TD. So if we uncomment this, you'll see it styles it. Now I couldn't do everything that I could in HTML and CSS, but I could do some. You'll notice I got some padding in here, and I got color, changed my font, and I did a padding 10px there as well. So if I go and comment this out again, you can see what happens. So that's what happens there with that styling. You can do whatever you want in there. Now block quotes, this is a fun area. So here's, you see this from above where the bold, italic, strike through, and underline. And then here's a code segment that's been put in here. You can actually copy. That's just part of the normal Markdown. But let's style this. Let's get this blue color in here and make it a little different. So I changed the background. You don't need to, but I changed the background just to show that it can be done. And I added some border radius. So I have a 6 pixel wide here, and my border radius is 6. So if I double this, you'll see an interesting thing happen. See the curvature? So you can do a curve if you want by doing it that way. But all I'm doing is a 6. And by the way, this is a great way to just play around with CSS if you want to, using an MD document, Markdown. So that is pretty much it. So let me go back to the top and let's review. So the Markdown styling, I have an H1 and H2. I haven't done a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Don't need to. I'm just focused on the ones I'm using here. And then the bold text, which is strong, and the EM, which is the italic, the del, which is the strike through, the insert, which is the underline. Okay. Then the list. So we have the list here, and I went through different ways of doing it. So if I comment this out, it'll go back to just a regular dot. And the only difference is I have that bottom margin. I can get rid of that, or I can bring it back. So, and let's say I want a square in there. So that's all you've got to do. And you can actually change your list. Now, tables, well, paragraph actually is the next thing. Remember we did that, we changed that. So everything is just plain. Let's go down here where it is. So this is your lorem ipsum. This is just plain text in there, okay? That's always done with a paragraph tag. So we're doing that. Where is it? Right here. So we're just doing this in the paragraph tag. So if we get rid of that, bring it back, and you can do whatever you want here. You can actually, so if you wanted to, you could say, okay, I want to put a padding of 5 pixels. You could do that. Whatever you want to do here. And you can say border radius, border color. Oh, that looks terrible. You can't see it. So let's say I want to do a color. Okay. And I want, so now I got it back in there so you can see it. You can do lots of things here. Whatever you want. Play around with it. See what works for you. The table. So the table again. So table header. If I try to put border, I don't want that. I want border radius. Border radius. And I want 3 pixels. That's not going to do anything. So if I go 10 pixels, it is doing something. So you just don't see it on the table itself. Now, so if I do radius top left, that's not going to do anything. Or is it left top? Nope, doesn't like that. So you can play around with it. Figure out what works for you. And then in the block quote. So in the block quote, you can do a lot of different things here. So background color, see, I don't like that. I want to go back to what the default is. So that looks much better. These things are handled in the styles up above for bold, italic, strike through, and underline text. But that should give you an idea of how you can do this. And it's fairly simple. You just do inline. Now, the only caveat on this is when you're looking at this in GitHub, GitHub will not show it styled. It's just going to show it with just all this at the top, and it's going to be kind of messy looking. And you can't really comment this out, because if you comment it out, it won't work. So if I go and I comment this whole thing out, okay, your styling's gone. So I'd have to undo that, bring my styling back. So the only downside is your code, your README.md or whatever Markdown document you have in GitHub is not going to be styled this way. So I have done some research on that. I haven't found anything. GitHub does have its own styling differences slightly than normal Markdown. But I hope this helps. Thank you.